Hello, everybody. So I've been recently talking to people who work a lot with CICD pipelines, and some of the common questions that arise can be resolved if we just apply some basic InfoSec principles in the problem of securing them. But first, who am I? I did my master's in cybersecurity in Boston University, where I had the pleasure to meet Professor Sharon Goldberg. As soon as I graduated, I joined her in creating Bison Zero, where we secure access to infrastructure, and I also love freestyle skiing. Okay, so why are we talking about securing your pipeline? On January 4th, CircleCI was breached. Most of you are probably familiar with CircleCI, but in short, it is a CI/CD SaaS service. You upload your secrets, and whenever you need to deploy, CircleCI will spin up a runner, put your secrets in it, and then the runner will access your infrastructure. By putting all of our secrets in one place, we create a single point of compromise. And that's what happened. Their vault was compromised, and adversaries gained access to everyone's infrastructure. So, how can we be better prepared for the next time this happens? How can we avoid having to find which of our secrets have been compromised, minimize the damage the secrets can lead to, and do that as quickly as possible? The best way to improve our security posture is by using short-lived credentials that are very well scoped. To do that, let's go back on how can we apply basic InfoSec ideas in CICD. NIST published about 2 years ago a very meaningful definition of zero trust. I read it, so you don't have to, but you really should. And here are some key takeaways on and how we can apply them in CI/CD. Firstly, a really important concept in zero trust definition is that network location does not imply trust. So just because you're behind my VPN, it does not mean that is secure. Some people will say, okay, if I self-host, I don't put trust on CircleCI, I am safe. Well, not so much. Here is an interesting list of hundreds of Jenkins CVEs. You still need to be monitoring and patching, etc., etc. Self-hosting and using a VPN is just not enough. The next zero trust principle is about least privilege. A way of applying this principle is by limiting which users can access which part of the infrastructure. By doing this, when a user is compromised, you limit the size of the security breach. For example, GitLab's shared runners contain all available credentials, so they are able to build for different pipelines. Of course, this means that as soon as the new malicious hire adds a new pipeline, he would gain instantly access to all of our secrets, since they are not scoped. The first thing to think about least privilege is who can touch which part of the pipeline. So in case of a malicious user, they can only damage what they had access to. Another aspect is scoping the pipeline's access to the infrastructure. So for example, you can have a runner and a service account and use policies to grant least privileged access to only specific parts of the infrastructure. Another thing you can do is time-boxed access. So you can say this build process happens every day at midnight only, so access is allowed only then. You can also activate access only when a deployment has been triggered by GitHub. So in this example here, the service account's credentials are useless unless there has been a real deploy, and only then the credentials get turned on and can be used. So this is one of the things we have built in our tool, but you can do this in lots of different ways. The objective is to reduce the blast radius. So even if someone steals the credentials of the service account, they're useless outside of the specific circumstances. This way, the damage from a credentials breach is significantly reduced. The fifth point from NIST is about logging. We all want to be logging at the pipeline and the infrastructure, and it helps us with compliance and to detect quickly when things go south. So yeah, please do it. The final and my favorite thing is about dynamic authentication and authorization. So essentially what this means is that we don't want long-lived credentials. We want to make sure that the credentials are granted only when you're authorized to gain access. One of the most popular ways of doing this is using OpenID Connect. So the way it works is that you set up an OpenID provider and then you configure your AWS account to trust that provider to identify runners. When the runner gets created, it requests a JSON web token from the provider identifies the runner and returns an ID token to the runner, which is essentially a signed attestation from the provider to the runner's identity. The runner sends that to the AWS STS API, which uses the provider's public key to validate the runner's identity and issues some temporary credentials to the runner. This way, the runner has gained short-lived credentials and can access the infrastructure safely. So, just to wrap up, you should try to use short-lived credentials as much as possible. They should be scoped towards who can use them, for what, and when. We should be logging, and doing just one of the above is not enough to make us secure. All right, that's all. Come find me. I would love to continue talking about skiing. pipelines. I really want to hear any ideas you may have on the subject. We are focusing on user and machine access to infrastructure, so that's where this whole thing came from. Yeah, looking forward to talk to you. Thank you very much.